Let's bring in. You're a job creator. Let's bring in. This is a fascinating story.
Yeah.
You know, we always talk about the drone wars against Afghanistan and Pakistan. You know, you're reading a couple weeks ago in the New York Times that now it's spreading to all of these different countries. And one that really jumped off the page for me, drone attacks in Somalia.
Well, joining us now, the Nation's Jeremy Scahill, whose investigative piece in the magazine's recent issue is on the CIA's secret sites in Somalia. Jeremy, I guess the CIA operating training programs and secret prisons out of Somalia is part of your reporting there. How big a threat are these terrorist groups there?
Well, first of all, we should say that President Obama campaigned on a promise to go up against these Bush-era policies, sort of declaring war on the world, running secret sites, torturing prisoners. And what I found in my 9 days in Mogadishu is that the CIA is deeply involved in an underground dungeon that is officially run by the Somali National Security Agency, but their salaries are paid by the CIA directly. In fact, one Somali agent described how the Somalis are lined up and paid $200 a month in cash by U.S. agents, and the U.S. is interrogating prisoners in this prison, including people that were rendered by the Kenyan government, snatched off the streets of Nairobi based on U.S. intelligence, and then taken to this secret prison and interrogated. That's one part of the CIA program, and it certainly goes against the president's executive orders that he signed in January of 2009, and against then CIA Director Leon Panetta's statement to CIA personnel that the U.S. had shut down all of these secret sites.
So Jeremy, let me ask you, did you, during your reporting, remarkable reporting, did you get pushback from the White House or anybody in the administration, or did they admit to it?
Well, you know, first of all, I contacted the Central Intelligence Agency about this, and the U.S. government would only make available one official to speak with me, and they said that I wouldn't be able to identify the name of that official or what entity they worked for, only that they were familiar with this program, and they tried to spin it, and they've been spinning ABC News and CNN, saying, look, we're just once or twice we've interrogated, or they actually say debriefed or interviewed prisoners, and we're not really running it. We just get permission from the Somalis to go in there. So it wasn't that they were trying to stop the story, Joe. It was that they were spinning the story and trying to make it sound like, you know, this is perfectly normal that the CIA is going into a bed-bug-infested underground prison where people never see the light of day and interrogating prisoners. And really, I think it's shameful how corporate media outlets have just served as conveyor belts for the propaganda and spin of the CIA. This is a very serious story about President Obama's hypocrisy on the issue of secret sites and rendition.
So Jeremy, let me ask you about, you brought up about how the Obama administration is continuing some Bush-era policies. Let me ask you about the drone attacks. The drone attacks in Afghanistan and Pakistan, in Yemen. We've heard reports in Somalia. As I read that, I guess it was last week, I said, oh, wait a second, have we been going into all of these countries over the past decade with drone attacks, dropping bombs in countries where we haven't declared war, or is this a recent development? That sounds... It sounds remarkable and disturbing to me. It seems like a new chapter. We're opening a new chapter in the United States attacking of countries that we haven't declared war against.
Right. In late 2009, General Petraeus, and this is under President Obama, General Petraeus issued what's called an execute order that authorized U.S. Special Operations Forces to militarily strike inside of any country where the U.S. determined a terrorist threat. And that was picking up on a 2004 order that was issued under the Bush administration. But, Joe, this drone bombing campaign of countries off of stated battlefields began in 2002. The Bush administration bombed Yemen in November of 2002, targeting an alleged al-Qaeda leader. The Obama administration has dramatically increased the drone attacks around the world. In Yemen, we've done cruise missile strikes, drone strikes. Now we're hitting regularly in Somalia. July 6th, there were 3 U.S. strikes. June 23rd, you had another U.S. strike inside of Somalia. The world is a battlefield, and a lot of liberals used to say, well, that was the Bush doctrine. The world is a battlefield. President Obama has hit harder in more countries with special ops forces from the Joint Special Operations Command and the CIA than Bush did. He's made possible a continuation of these policies that I think McCain would not have been able to push through because there would have been pushback from some semblance of an anti-war movement. There's no anti-war movement that has any voice in this country anymore, and so Obama has legitimized and normalized and attempted to legalize policies that a lot of people on the left were saying were immoral and illegal under President Bush.
So Mike Barnicle, Jeremy has given us precedent. 2002, the Bush administration did this. It's certainly been ramped up since 2009. General Petraeus is the type of war General Petraeus believes needs to be fought worldwide. But Mike, it's, to me, regardless of whether it's the Bush administration or the Obama administration, it is profoundly disturbing that the United States of America is striking out with bombing attacks against countries that we haven't declared war against. The precedent is horrific moving forward.
Well, I mean, you say profoundly disturbing, Joe, but I bet you there's a substantial segment of the population out there listening to Jeremy talking about secret sites in Somalia, ongoing clandestine wars in Yemen, and saying, good, let's do it that way instead of sending in, 6 battalions.
Right. I mean, we have to decide: are we a country that operates under the rule of law, or do we believe we're emperors that can wage war on the world? There's no doubt that there are actual dangerous terrorists in these countries.
What's the objective?
Does your reporting bear out that it's working? Are they rounding up terrorists?
No, I mean, in fact, the CIA program in Mogadishu has been a disaster. They tried only one operation in a Shabab-controlled. Shabab is the militia that's tied to Al-Qaeda. In Mogadishu, they tried one mission late last year. The Somali agents were killed, and they haven't tried another one since.
You're from Nation magazine. Why has the major media not picked up on your story about the dungeons and the renditions and the bombings and the drone strikes and put it on the front pages of the nation's press?
Well, I think part of the issue here is that there are journalists. I know of 2 journalists from major U.S. news organizations that were aware of the prison that's being used by the CIA and aware of the secret CIA site at the airport. They need to be asked the question, or ask it themselves internally, why don't you report on these things?
Who are they?
Well, I'm not going to name those journalists because they told me this in confidence.
What publications?
Major publications. I'm not going to cite the publications because it was told to me by journalists in confidence. And it sounds like there are fights in those newsrooms about these stories.
But let me just say what it sounds like. It sounds like the guys are saying, look, this is a left-wing guy from the Nation, and he's hyped this whole thing up, and there's really not that much to it.
Who spent 9 days in the most dangerous city in the world, unembedded, interviewing senior intelligence officials.
I'm not denying that you did, but what the lack of response from the major media and the CIA and all the rest of it suggests they're dismissing what you've done.
Right. I think a lot of people are asleep at the wheel because it's President Obama. There's the sort of operating on faith that what he's doing is right and lawful, and that's just not the case. I mean, the fact is that we are making more enemies around the world in these drone strikes and cruise missile attacks because we're killing a lot of civilians. For every quote-unquote bad guy that's killed, how many innocent civilians are being killed? There's going to be blowback for this, and it's going to harm our national security.
Where are the biggest threats? You talk about Al-Qaeda obviously not being dismantled, but certainly taken a hit recently. You were in East Africa, so where specifically is Al-Qaeda the biggest threat to us right now?
Right. No, there's no doubt that Al-Qaeda for years has been attempting to recruit and build bases of operations in East Africa, going all the way back to the 1998 embassy bombings of the U.S. embassies in Tanzania and Nairobi, Kenya. One of the major figures in Al-Qaeda, Fazul, was killed when I was in East Africa, accidentally at a checkpoint in Somalia. So clearly they have people on the ground. They've been working with Shabab. In Yemen, however, that's where much of the U.S. focus has been. Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula is a relatively small group, and there have been attacks against the United States that have been planned and plotted from Yemen. But we are talking about a relatively small threat globally compared to a lot of other threats that we face, namely our economic situation in this country. And the response has been to use a sledgehammer in place of a fly swatter to deal with these problems. But Yemen and Somalia clearly have been on the Obama administration's radar for a long time, almost from day one, and they've been hitting very hard.
Nicole Wallace, Jeremy's exactly right. We've commented about it before on this show. Had the Bush administration engaged in the massive drone strikes that the Obama administration had done, Code Pink would have shut down committee hearings in Washington. The New York Times, the Washington Post, most other major newspapers, CBS, ABC, NBC, you name it, everybody would have been on top of this story. That I think Jeremy's reporting it's disturbing what's going on there, but the headline here really is that the anti-war movement on the left has been defanged by the election of Barack Obama. And unlike George W. Bush, this president gets a blank check on these type of activities from the press and from the left.
What's so interesting is that under the Bush administration, you barely needed the anti-war movement because the New York Times carried all of their water on the front pages of their paper every single day. And forget about the political appointees in the Bush administration. The New York Times often went toe-to-toe with the career intelligence officials. And there was nothing that they wouldn't put on the front page of the New York Times, nothing, regardless of the threat that it represented to the lives of intelligence officials in this country and around the world. So this is shocking to me. And that's why I asked you if it worked, because sometimes if a program is wildly successful, then people are protective. But this response that you got is so stunning to me.
Well, also, I mean, when anyone flying into Mogadishu can see a CIA base in full sight and the kid chewing khat, the leaves that they chew in Somalia, across the street from the airport, it's like, oh, there's where the CIA base is. You have a serious operational security problem, and you have to question whether or not anything you're doing there is effective when everyone, I'm not talking about the Shabab, I'm just talking about guys on the street in the market. They all know where the CIA is. Yeah. So what kind of operational security do you have when I can walk in and within 48 hours of being in Mogadishu find 2 CIA sites?
Okay, the nation's Jeremy Scahill. Fascinating.
Jeremy, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And it is remarkable reporting, and I hope some of those journalists that you talk to at major publications win their battles inside the newsroom, so this story can see the light of day. And if the administration cares to contest it, maybe they can. But as you said, sounds like right now they're admitting it by saying very little.
Right. I mean, why would President Obama sign those executive orders and then turn around and utilize secret prisons? The left should be asking that question. Congress should be investigating it, and the White House should be asked directly. Isn't this a contradiction of the executive orders you issued days within taking office?
Yeah. All right, Jeremy, thank you. Coming up, Rupert Murdoch scheduled to testify this